Hello, thanks for listening to the Finance Leadership Podcast. It's your fortnightly focus on the latest information and news about the Finance Leadership Programme pathway to your CGMA qualification. It's produced by AICPA and CIMA, together as the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants. You can find out more at aicpa.org and cimaglobal.com. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Kevin Gormley, as usual, your host, and today we are joined by Andrew Mower from Kaplan. Welcome, Andrew. Hoping you could give us a little bit of information about your background and what you do at Kaplan, please.
Hi, Kevin. Yeah, thanks for having me. So I'm a tutor at Kaplan. It's just entering my 10th year at Kaplan. Teach a lot of the London courses, but also do some of the online things. My background, I was at PwC for 4 years and studied at Kaplan, and then joined Kaplan, as I say, 10 years ago. And I teach a range of qualifications. So obviously do CIMA, and we do ACA and ACCA courses as well. I taught the first ever CIMA operational case study course a good few years ago, and I've been doing it ever since. I love it as a course. So I think we're going to have a little chat about that today and what it involves and so on. And we're lucky at Kaplan. We've got some, we've had a few prize winners over the years as well. So yeah, we've had some good success with the operational case study. I also do the strategic case study. So I then often see the same students again at a later level, which is always nice to sort of see them progressing and nearing the end of their qualification.
Great. And as Andrew's pointed out, what we intend to do today is talk about the Skills Premium product that we have in FLP. And we're going to discuss, obviously, from a tuition perspective, how students prepare for the operational case study in particular. So as Andrew has said, his expertise lies in the OCS and the SCS. So we hope to do a number of podcasts over the series that cover the OCS, MCS and SCS. So we might be fortunate enough to get Andrew back at a later date to talk about the SCS. So as I mentioned, we have a number of subscription models available on FLP. Skills Premium is the product whereby we have partnered with Kaplan, and they deliver a high quality live classroom based tuition addition to our product, which helps students have the best possible tuition experience moving through the product. So we're going to talk and focus today on the operational case study. So after a student completes the level learning, they then begin to prepare for the case study. In doing so, they obviously utilize the case study review course. Could you tell us a little bit about how that course is structured, the setup, and how the classes run?
Yep, sure. So as you say, Kaplan offers the FLP Skills Premium course, and it's sort of a continuation of that in terms of the format. So we run, as you mentioned, live online classes, and they're in the evening, so they run from 6 until 8:30. And we usually sort of have one session every other week, or sometimes weekly, depending on sort of the time of the year and everything else. Those sessions are designed to be really interactive with the students. So it's an opportunity for them to ask questions, get involved. I'm a big fan of using some of the online software that we have partnered with. So we use some quiz software and some software to collate people's ideas. And it's just nice, I think, for the students to be able to bounce off each other. And one might say, God, that question was tough. Did anyone else find that one hard? Or I struggle with this bit. And I think it's quite reassuring for them to get the thoughts of their peers, which is quite nice as well. It's a bit more of a sort of community feel, which is great. So yeah, the way it works in terms of once they've completed the sort of the FLP element, as you say, we move on to the case study. Our courses are designed specifically around the company information that CIMA will be releasing a few weeks before the exam sitting. So you get this pre-scene information, which is the most recent one is 30 pages long, which is obviously a lot of information about a fictional company. And then, that your exam will then be based on that. So the case study exam is then based on that company, which is great because you get to really know particular industries. So yeah, we've recently done one on barbecue grills. So I feel like I'm an expert on barbecues, if anyone asked that. Previously done beehives. I ended up with a conversation with a beekeeper, and he was astounded by my knowledge of all the different hives available, having done the case. And solar panels, to be fair, not spoken to too many solar panel experts, but yeah, you get this weird niche knowledge of particular industries, which I really enjoy. So yeah, our courses are all built around that particular company. And we really focus on bridging that gap between the knowledge you've acquired in the FLP course in terms of the technical nitty-gritty bits that you've worked through in all the modules on FLP. And then we're then trying to think, how do you apply that in a more work-like environment? And that's the purpose of these case studies, is about almost pretending you're in a work setting. And actually the OCS exam, you get emails coming in and things. It's, it's Monday morning and you've got an email from Julie asking you to help with this activity-based costing query. So it is trying to replicate that. And I think the reassuring thing is there's less focus on your technical knowledge and more on the application once you get to the case studies. So one of the great things about the case study exams is that they're not as technically focused as the FLP elements. So whereas in the modules, you'll be maybe calculating a variance and trying to work out the numbers behind it and actually how to do that. The focus once you get to the case study is more on your application. So you might get given a variance report with all the variants listed, and then it's up to you to interpret them and explain why they may have happened, potential solutions going forward, etc. So it sort of takes away that, again, the nitty gritty of all the technical bits and more thinking at a slightly higher level. How does this apply? Which again is, I think, probably more likely to be the sorts of things you'd be doing in a role in the workplace, which is great. So our courses, again, are designed to prepare students for that. Real emphasis on technique. Exam technique is crucial, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about that later in terms of tips, but it's getting those students ready for those exams.
Okay, and the operational case study is in terms of technicality, understanding elements of budgeting or forecasting or international accounting standards, for example. It is the most technical out of the 3 case studies that we have in our qualification. Although, as you point out, it's all about the application and the day-to-day use and the applicability to real-life scenarios. That's the objective of the case study exam. But just to be aware, students that may listen to this, the operational case study is the most technical of the 3. So if the technical elements cause you concern or challenge, it does change focus as you progress through the qualification.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm just going to add strategic, as you say, there's much more emphasis on, should we expand into America or should we look to launch this new product range? So a lot higher level decisions, which is great. So you sort of see that progress throughout the levels, which I think is really nice. And you become more senior in your roles at the companies as you progress through the different levels, which I think is quite satisfying as well. So
in terms of the overview of the level, so students preparing for the case study will have set a number of competencies, and in terms of what they will be expected to be assessed on, Andrew, could you just touch on some of the key areas that the syllabus will focus on and you'll be tested on in the OCS?
The driver paper for this, sort of the main one, is the management accounting side of things. So sort of the P1 in the other format, which is predominantly looking at things like costing, budgeting, planning, decision-making, those sorts of elements. So there's a lot of that. More specifically, if we wanted some common themes, things like variances that I've mentioned and activity-based costing are particularly crucial in terms of the management accounting side of things. And again, you obviously need to understand how they come about and how they work and things in order to explain those different bits of costing and ABC properly and so on. We then also see financial accounting, things like the financial statements, elements of tax, working capital positions. So there's some of that. And also then digital finance, for example, talking about data and analytics and KPIs. So discussing those. So a bit more theory based, that one, rather than the numbers based.
If you were to pick 2-3 areas that really challenge students, so the real difficult subjects, and I know that it mightn't be a full competency, it might be a particular skill set within FLP. What would be the core areas that you would say would cause students most challenge?
Almost certainly it comes from the management accounting side of things, having taught P1 as a separate subject separately as well. And it's always a difficult subject, that one. There's a lot of content in there. And again, it does cover quite a few technical bits. Specifically within that, linear programming is always a common one. I was doing the FLP Skills Premium course last week, and I just mentioned that, and then you see the chat panel flooded with, oh no, and this sort of stuff. So I feel like that's always something that people are slightly concerned about. Again, it's one of those topics. Once you break it down and look at it and chat through it, it does click, but it does take that time to click, which I think sometimes obviously causes a bit of stress. Other things, I think variances is a crucial area in the operational case study exam. Like, variances are really commonly tested, and there are always a couple of specific variances. Things like sales variances, people are usually quite happy with. But then once you get into the fixed overhead variances, some of those can get quite technical as well. So getting the breakdown between those and things is another thing that sometimes causes concern. So there are, again, within that management accounting area, there are quite a few little bits in there that can cause a few issues. And again, just need a bit more time to make sure you're comfortable with them.
It chimes with a regular story we've heard for years about P1 and even P2 in terms of a challenging area, but obviously they're core to the qualifications, so they underpin the fundamentals of management accounting. So it's really important students get a good feel for those subjects. We see students make some of their mistakes again and again through the analysis that the examiners write about after each window of an exam. So as part of the premium product, students have the ability to complete and submit mock exams in preparation for the case study. What sort of things do you see occurring again and again as a mistake or an issue that students are doing?
I'd say there are two major things that we see from students who are maybe not scoring as well as others. The first one is time management. Again, it's absolutely crucial. This exam is very different from a lot of exams that people have done in the past, in that once your time's up for that task, you'll never see it again. So if it's a 45-minute task, you get 45 minutes to do that, and then it automatically submits and you can't go back. So in some ways that's nice because it means you can't waste too much time on that task, but equally you've got to get everything done within that 45 minutes. Otherwise, that's it. Your chance is gone. So that, I think, people often struggle with, especially, as you say, like we get 3 mocks sent in by our FLP Skills Premium students. And the first mock especially, they're so keen to impress on that first bit of the question. And especially if it's a nice question, actually, people spend far too long on it. And then the second bit, then often they struggle with just because of the timing. So time management is a big one, which again comes with practice and making sure questions are done to time. And the second thing is it's all about application. This exam is all about applying your knowledge to the company and to the question that you've been set. And I think people are often too focused on trying to recite all the knowledge they've got about that particular topic and not think why it's relevant. So that application and bringing it into the context of the company and not just saying, oh yeah, I think it'd be great to get more people involved in budgeting because it's great for motivation. Fine. But you need to then link that to the company, which is crucial if we want to hit this target of our whatever's increasing by 10% next year and so on. So linking it specifically to that, I think, is the other thing that people often forget or struggle to do. So I'd say time management and application are probably the 2 big things we see. Yeah.
So justifying a solution or a reason is really important. So why is it relevant to the situation you face and to the company you're working in? Just such a common theme that we hear again and again, Andrew, that people want to impress by reciting reams and reams of information that they've memorized from a book, but that doesn't solve a problem. So justifying, reasoning, and being able to articulate a message and back it up with facts and figures, that's part of the solution. And the case study exams are about testing your ability to, as you say, apply knowledge, not just regurgitate that knowledge. So that's what differs between university, for example, and professional exams. It's all about the application, and case study exams are a great way to do that. From your experience, what are the most common areas that get examined pretty frequently in the OCS?
So I think from the management accounting, I touched on these a bit earlier, but I think variances are a big one. And again, a common question around being given a variance report and then having to interpret it and again apply the understanding of those variances to the situation that the company finds themselves in and offer advice. Activity-based costing. So a lot of the time, the companies that we are looking at are doing standard absorption costing, and there is scope for them to switch to activity-based costing and whether they should get involved in that switch or not. So sort of pros and cons of ABC and things like that. Budgeting is another one we see quite a bit. So looking at different types of budgeting, so zero-based, incremental, beyond budgeting as well, and also whether people should get more involved in that is quite a common theme, I'd say. From more of the digital finance type bit, so sort of the E1 type subject, KPIs, so key performance indicators, and coming up with ideas for KPIs and again, justifying them as you mentioned. So not just saying, oh yeah, I think it'd be great if we could do return on capital employed, but explaining why and thinking why that's particularly relevant. And then from the more financial accounting side of things, there are a few key standards that we see quite a bit. So in terms of the IAS side of things, inventory is quite a common one. So looking at their inventory, and that links in with working capital management as well. So are they holding enough inventory or too much? PPE, so property, plant and equipment, IAS 16 is another one that we see quite frequently. And also leases. We get a lot of companies leasing assets now. So again, being able to explain how that works and so on. So the IFRS 16 side of things, I'd say, is pretty important.
That's invaluable insight for students to have those key areas to maybe brush up on a couple of days before the OCS, because obviously we will have students preparing at the moment on the platform. So just to wrap up, what we're looking for is your personal advice. So 3 points to remember in terms of tips for preparing for the OCS. Do you have your top 3?
Yeah, so in terms of preparation, I think what I will say is a lot of students doing the case studies are overwhelmed by the amount of underlying knowledge that they may be expected to learn. So I was looking the other day at the Kaplan materials for E1, P1 and F1, so sort of the 3 underlying subjects, and it's over 2,000 pages of content within those books. And I think you can almost, you could drive yourself mad trying to remember every single bit of every page. But what we've got to do is really think about focusing on technique, look at those key areas, and look at past papers. Like there's a range of past papers with answers and the examiner comments available online, which are brilliant to give you an insight as to what comes up, how it's tested, what the examiner's looking for as well, which is great. So I'd look at those past papers, try and focus on the key things rather than trying to learn absolutely everything of the underlying stuff. Practice to time. As I mentioned earlier, one of the key things is time management. So make sure you are strict with yourself, set a timer and think, right, okay, I needed to be quicker with that. And again, as you mentioned, with the FLP Skills Premium, those mock exams, and we also take tasks in for marking throughout the course, reacting to feedback. So yeah, if you are submitting those mock exams, don't just look at the score, but take your time to debrief it, have a look, and understand where you can improve. That's a crucial part of it.
Thanks, Andrew. A very useful conversation. I appreciate you taking the time, and I enjoyed your insight and your reflection on the things you can learn while sitting a case study exam, particularly about the beehives or solar panels. I found that. It's amazing the things you can learn. So not only can you learn to apply knowledge, but you can learn about industries that you might not have known anything about. That's an interesting view. So that's a good place to end our conversation today. There's plenty more to explore about the topic on our show notes. You'll find all the links to all the resources we've mentioned at the bottom. To view them, just click the episode's info icon in the podcast app or on your smartphone or tablet, or open the browser and look for the show notes right there. You'll find more on FLP on enroll.cgma.org. Thanks again to our guest, and of course, thanks for listening. If you know a friend or colleague who would use this information, feel free to share it with your networks. You'll see the sharing buttons on the podcast app. That's it for now. Keep listening for the next episode in 2 weeks. From myself, Kevin Gormley, and from Andrew, thank you for your time. Goodbye.
This content is designed to provide illustrative information with respect to the subject matter covered and does not represent an official opinion or position of the AICPA, the Association, or CIMA. It is provided with the understanding that they are not engaged in offering legal, accounting, or other professional services. If such advice or expert assistance is required, the services of a competent professional person should be sought. The AICPA, the Association, and CIMA make no representations, warranties, or guarantees as to, and assume no responsibility for, the content or application of the material contained herein, and especially disclaim all liability for any damages arising out of the use of, reference to, or reliance on such material.